Didn't have the authority to sign the contract, but I did it anyway.
All right, welcome back to the Fleet Defender Kill Chain podcast, and today we have Daragh. So welcome to the Kill Chain podcast.
Terry, how you doing? I'm
Doing
glad to be here.
fantastic.
I feel bad because I think we've cancelled this 2 or 3 times, right?
Yeah, it happens.
So bad for that.
It doesn't affect me, but it affects Kate's schedule.
Kate, sorry, Kate. So where did kill chain come from?
So kill chain is a term in cybersecurity. It's basically the kill chain is everything from starting with reconnaissance all the way to post-exploitation and effect on a system. So it's kind of a deeply held term in the cybersecurity industry.
I feel like I should know that, and I've never heard it.
Oh, really? Yeah. So it kind of goes back to like the MITRE attack framework and all that. So like,
Yeah, okay. I tend to ignore frameworks.
yeah. Well, if you get like, if you want to compromise a phone, or maybe if you want to compromise a vehicle and you have to chain exploits together, you have your kill chain. So it's used in, kind of the military offensive context.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. So, I think what we could do is just start with, I think you have a very interesting journey, right? Because you're currently the CIO of I think the 5th largest trucking company in North America now.
We're definitely, we're the 5th largest dedicated trucking company, and we're probably in the top 7 truckload carriers. Yeah.
Okay. So pretty high up there.
Big.
So, and you started as a driver way back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Or how did that journey look like for you?
I think I had a journey. I don't know if it's interesting or not, but I can tell you about it. I came here in 1994. I was born and raised in Ireland, so I spent the first 24 years of my life in Ireland, and then got the opportunity. Believe it or not, I won a green card in a lottery. Okay, can you imagine that happening today? But I won a green card in the lottery, and basically I didn't win the green card. I won the right to apply for a green card, and if you met all the criteria, you were guaranteed it. So I went through that process. It was called the Morrison Visa Program. It was Senator Morrison, who had Irish roots, sponsored the program, and I think it was really weird. I think there were 8,000 visas available or applications available, and if I remember correctly, 300,000 or 400,000 people in Ireland applied for it. And what you did was you filled out a postcard. You remember, you would send a postcard and you sent it to the American embassy, and they put them all in a big bag. Some kind of bag, and then after about 3 months, there was a cutoff, and then they pulled the first 8,000 names out, and those 8,000 people were contacted, and they had the ability to apply for a green card. And the funny part was me and 7 guys I hung out with all got pulled out of the bag. So we all applied. Every one of us got the green card. So, it was at that point, you just went through the steps. You had to have, background check and all that type of stuff done. You had to have a job offer in the States, etc. And we all wrangled all that and got it done, got our green cards, and we all ended up in Atlanta together. The reason we went to Atlanta is my brother, who had gotten a green card in the Donnelly visa program 3 or 4 years before, was south of Atlanta in a place called Montezuma, Georgia. So anyway, we came over, landed in Atlanta. It was sort of 2 years before the Olympics were in Atlanta. So Atlanta was absolutely booming. Jobs everywhere. Now, coming from a country like Ireland where there were no jobs, that was coming out of a recession, but it's still in a recession. There were very few jobs. So to come to a country where literally you would take your pick of jobs, we thought it was fantastic. So work construction for a couple of months. Then me and a buddy applied to CDL school with, I'm not really allowed to say it, but Schneider, one of our biggest competitors today. Went to truck driving school, got our CDLs, and eventually ended up teaming together. And we teamed together for about 6 months. Decided if we wanted to remain friends, we better get out of this 8x8 cube we were living in together, or we were going to kill. One of us was going to die. So we split up. I drove for another month or 2 after that. So I was probably 9 months total, maybe 10 months total driving, and then quit that and ended up applying for a job with a company called P3 Software, got into their warehouse management, sort of took the warehouse management. There was absolutely zero software to run the warehouse. So I kind of decided I was going to make it my mission to put some tech around it. I did. I worked for a lady who became a mentor And what she did with me was she looked at everything I was doing and she kind of kept encouraging me and kept helping me. But I also did things that almost got me fired. I mean, in my first couple of years, like she used to say to me years later, like there was 5 or 6 times, like I brought you into my office with the intention of firing you and somehow I didn't. And like I did things like I signed a contract for Manhattan Associates for a warehouse management and shipping system. And I never told anyone I signed the contract, and I didn't have any budget for it. And I didn't have the authority to sign the contract, but I did it anyway. And her response to that was one time she brought me into the office to fire me. And she said, what I decided to do in the moment, because you were making such a case for it, that I said, okay, I'm going to give you 12 months. And if you don't have it implemented and ready to go in 12 months, and then I'm going to fire you. And of course, I didn't have it done in 12 months, but we got it done eventually and I didn't get fired. But so from that, sort of doing a lot of this tech work on the side or as a part-time job, I kind of worked my way into technology. And I ended up working on an SAP implementation project not long after we got acquired by a company called Sage out of the UK. And I did that as a part of a large team for 8 years, somewhere around that time. And in the meantime, I kept getting dragged into various IT projects outside of the SAP project, and then ended up working for the CIO, sort of dotted line to him, but just got to really like and enjoy and love and learn tech. And, did a little bit of everything in that space of time, ran, the service desk team, helped with infrastructure, sort of was the business liaison for a ton of areas, including R&D, and just became so sort of well-rounded in the area of tech, which at the time, by the way, I didn't appreciate. I kind of felt like I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. But when I finally got to the point where I was able to run an organization and be the CIO, I figured out, okay, all of that sort of jack of all trades has really helped me, because now I can sit down and have a conversation with anyone about any tech that's out there. But anyway, I moved through Sage, got a job offer at Vonage. I don't know if you remember Vonage, voice over IP. So they're the ones who invented it and made it kind of the standard for home communication, like telephone. But then they decided to go into business and they recruited me to help them create some business systems that would bill and, provision and port numbers, etc. So worked with them for 6.5 years and, kind of worked from being brought in to do a very specific job around stabilizing systems and billing, we went on an acquisition spree, essentially bought a bunch of companies kind of worldwide, mostly in the UK and San Francisco area, but we also had an office in Tel Aviv, Israel. So spent a ton of time just building up an IT department there. They never had that function. They never had that discipline. It was sort of everyone was left to their own devices. So they asked me to build that IT department, and I did. And then got recruited by Werner to come here. That was a tough decision because, trucking company in Omaha, Nebraska wasn't exactly what was on my bingo card at any point. But when I came up here and met the team, I really got intrigued by the whole idea, all of the tech that was there, but all of the tech that also wasn't there. Like it was kind of like low tech, but needed to be high tech. Met Derek Leathers, who's CEO and chairman, and interviewed with him. And Derek sort of captured my attention too, because you could tell he was passionate about doing this, but wasn't sure how to go about getting it done. Mm-hmm. So he and I we talked quite a bit during the interview process and figured out, I want to work for Werner. I really want to work for Derek Leathers. Came here, that was 6 years ago, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's probably way more detail than you wanted. But
no, that's fantastic. It's always interesting to know kind of the journey through and like what actually got people interested in it. And like you mentioned, you started with some of those early tech problems. Like, was tech always something that interested you, or was it just something you ran into and pivoted into?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember in the late 80s, borrowing money from my brother to buy a PC. Right. And just because I wanted to learn how to program, and there was, at that point, there was I don't even think there were real college classes in Ireland around the level of stuff I wanted to do. So he helped me buy a PC. I don't know if I ever paid him back that money, actually, now that I think about it, but
hopefully he's not listening and sends you the bill.
He's fine. He's not getting it now. But he helped me buy a first PC, and I did a lot of work on that. And so I always had an interest in tech, just fascinated by what technology could do, but more fascinated by what it was going to do. So it just felt like a natural progression. Not one, in college, when I left college, I don't have a college degree. So I left, when I got the offer to apply for the green card, I was in college. And when I got the green card, I was a year and a half into a 4-year polymer science and plastic engineering course. And it was either stay in Ireland, get my degree, hopefully, and probably have no job after it because there wasn't a lot of work. Or leave and go to America and get a job. And for Irish people of that age, like young people my age, America was the holy grail. That's where you wanted to end up. Most people went illegally. I didn't have the courage or to do that. So I wasn't going to go illegally, but when I got the opportunity to go legally, I did it. So, and then just, I think the natural progression into tech, like everywhere I've been, I want, like even I was fascinated when I drove for Schneider, they had a GPS unit. It was one of the first ones. Werner had it around the same time, but it was you did this very abbreviated type of back and forth. Like we actually had a list of abbreviations to look up because then I think they paid by the character. So you wouldn't use the word thanks, you'd use THX, right?
Right.
So wherever you could abbreviate. So I remember we would get messages and it would look like Greek or Chinese or any other language than English, and we would have to go, oh, that means, and that means, so look it up. So just, always had an interest in it. And, being in tech right now is just fascinating.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. When you got to Warner, so that was 6 years ago.
Yep. 6 years ago next week.
Next week. Oh, so you're coming up on the anniversary. That's awesome. So when you got there, what was surprising to you in like what they didn't have? Because they were already a major enterprise, logistics carrier at that point in time.
Yeah.
What was surprising? Like, I can't believe they're not doing this. And what was the thing that was like, wow, I can't believe they're doing this. That's amazing.
I mean, I think so. And I want to be really careful here because Werner got to where they were because of the tech they had, right? You don't get to be a $3 billion corporation, $3 billion in revenue, $3 billion in market cap without having some technology and doing it really well. So, they were mainly relying on AS400 mainframe and a lot of other stuff that was mainly homegrown and home built. And look at, I can't disparage it because it worked, right? It took them from nothing to $3 billion in revenue and made them very successful. So, but I think what was most surprising to me was that was it. It was AS400 mainframe, still running code from 35 years previous, and not almost zero cloud compute, like no platform. They were using Salesforce, but in a very minor way. We were using other cloud applications, but again, in very minor ways. So I think I was surprised at just, they were very, very good at maintaining the stack that they had, but there wasn't a lot of, I don't want to say interest. I think there was interest, but there wasn't a lot of effort to go into much more modern and build a more modern tech stack. Now, I don't want to say interest because Derek Leathers definitely had interest. That's why he hired me, right? So at that point, I think the realization had set in that we can't stay here and grow. We have to do something about our tech stack. So the surprise for me was it could be and should be more modern, and that's what I'm here for. I think so. That was on sort of old tech. On the new tech side, like it fascinated me how well, like if you looked at what they had done, they had this application called Smart, and it was running the brokerage division and the intermodal work. And while it was kind of kludgy and stuck together, like for a homegrown platform that wasn't designed by enterprise software architects, like hardened by people who were going to sell it. It was really good. So I think there was a lot, so the encouraging part was when you walk in and you look at that, there's a lot of talent here. And we just got to figure out how to use that talent to the best of their ability. And that's what we've been doing for the past 6 years.
Right. So along those 6 years, what did that journey look like? So cloud modernization, kind of move to cybersecurity, move to AI, or was it a little bit of everything all at once? Like, what did that flavor look like?
I think at the beginning, in any CIO's journey, like and this was my first real CIO gig. I mean, I was the equivalent of a CIO at Vonage without the title, but this was the first EVP CIO gig, but I realized what you got to do is you got to build credibility, right? There's nothing like credibility, because if you walk in there and you try the first three things you try are big swings, and you have a miss, your credibility is shot. If you walk in the door and you take some small swings and you have hits, well, hey, I got a little bit of a track record. So I always say that, like, you just got to build credibility, and then once you get there, you got to maintain it. But then when you get to the point where you have credibility, then you got to take the big swings. And if you miss occasionally, you're probably going to get a little bit of grace because you've already delivered another area. So I took some small swings, just simple stuff that was, in my mind, pretty obvious and pretty easy things to fix. Like, for example, giving people access. Yeah, we were blocking things like Gmail and Yahoo Mail and, Microsoft Outlook Personal at the firewall, just because, I guess there was a sense that we don't want people wasting their work time looking at their Gmail personal accounts. But in my opinion, and thankfully Derek and others agree with me, we also sit there and go, we expect these people to work long hours when they have to, and these are parents and they've got kids and doctor's appointments and all kinds of stuff, so we should give them the ability to check their personal email when they need to. So, like, small wins like that, which just people go, oh, thank God, now I can at least look at my Gmail. And an awful lot, it surprises me how many corporations still do that to this day. So things like that. But then the Wi-Fi network wasn't very good. The network in general wasn't very good. And again, that's not, it's just sort of, it was modernizing all of that so that when you were using Wi-Fi, you had a really strong, well-functioning Wi-Fi that you could connect to and work all day. And part of that is also cost avoidance, right? To me, Wi-Fi should be the only method you use to get internet inside a building. You shouldn't have to plug in anymore. Wi-Fi is more than adequate. Yeah, there's some jobs, network engineers might need to plug in. Certain, very, very sensitive systems might need to plug in, but the general user just needs to connect to Wi-Fi. So we literally eliminated, Cat5 cabling, and we went to Wi-Fi. But that made people, that helped as well, because that meant anywhere they went, any conference room they walked into, they were able to connect. Zoom, they were already on Zoom, but then rolling out Zoom rooms to every conference room in the building. Again, not a very expensive endeavor. It was in the middle of COVID. It mattered, and people appreciated that. So small wins first, builds credibility.
Gotcha. Now I have this quote in my head, and I think it came from you, but I'll say it and see if you remember really saying
smart,
it or not.
I'll claim it. If it's not so smart, I'll say not me.
But I think it was something along the lines of that. Werner happens to be a tech company that is a tech company that just happens to do logistics.
Yeah.
Is that something that came from you, or do I have this completely?
It did, and I'm probably going. I might get killed when I go back to Werner, but like, I think it's true. It's partly true, right? But the reason I started saying that was to encourage the tech team to understand the importance. Like, I think one of the things that happens in corporations that aren't tech first is the technical teams tend to feel like they're secondary to operations, secondary to other departments. Now, that's not intentional, and this is the way it was at Vonage, right? So at Vonage, for example, the product delivery team, the engineering team, the R&D team, they felt like they got priority, and the CIO's organization, my organization, felt like it was secondary, and you take a back seat all the time. So part of what I wanted to do was make my technical team understand, for two reasons. First of all, your role is important here, but second of all, this is what gets our company to a better place. We have to have better tech. We have to have employees come to work and know that the tech is reliable, will do what they needed to do every single time they need to do it. And it's a differentiator in the marketplace. So when we walk into a customer, a large customer or a large potential customer, we need to be able to talk about our tech. And up until that point, Werner and most transportation companies didn't do that. So that was part of it. It was just say, hey, we're a trucking company, or we're a tech company that just happens to move loads. Like, that's not true. We are a trucking company first and foremost, but it was a line I devised to just sort of wake people up a little bit and say this is important. And that said, every company is a tech company. Like, you cannot survive in this world today and not have a huge amount of tech. And you have to have an IT department, and you have to have some level of development and software configuration, network engineer. So you have to be a tech company. So I also love that line. Every company is a tech company.
I could see that as well.
Yeah.
And everybody, when they're trying to label or define something like Fleet Defender, for example, are we a cybersecurity company or are we an AI company? Because it's all AI enabled cyber. Right. So like, which way do you go with
like
it?
AI, like, I mean, not to get onto AI, because honestly, I've been talking about it all week, but like I'm at the point now where I kind of wish people would stop talking about AI. Like every company who does tech, which is almost every company, has to have AI, and they're going to have it. So whether you're delivering software, whether you're delivering AI software, platform software, if you're Salesforce, Workday, you have a certain amount of AI running on your systems, and soon to be almost all of your systems will run on AI. So what I would love people to do is stop talking about AI, right? Just like, you don't walk in and say, hey, I'm connected to the internet anymore. We just are. But there was a time when that was a selling point, right? You don't walk in and say, hey, I deliver my software electronically anymore. But there was a time when that was a big selling point. So now I think we need to stop talking about AI and talk about the tech that we bring and the functionality of the tech and why it makes you better. And just remember, AI is there. It is. Another interesting thing, and this came up at some of the conferences, and I've heard this multiple times, including from my daughter, who's not long out of college. There is a growing unrest and unease among college-age kids coming out of college about AI, because they see it as a threat to their jobs, they see it as a threat to their future, and they also see it, from an environmental perspective, that AI, huge data centers, huge draw on power. So I think we have to be careful about how we reference AI. There's been several, I don't know if you read, but at several graduation ceremonies last week, when AI was mentioned, the whole student body booed when it was mentioned. Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
Look it up. Yeah, go to ChatGPT and it'll tell you. But the reality is that there is a growing discontent with AI that I think we have to be very careful about. This is the most fantastic technology the world has ever seen. There's a lot of good it's doing. There's a lot of great it's doing. It's going to make all of our jobs easier in the future. However, the younger populations seem to be at very best in two minds about it. So I think we ought to be careful.
I've heard stuff like that too from, even kids in middle school talking about, like, I think there was a funny line I heard, which, I think it was funny because of how it was delivered, but it was like they didn't want to use ChatGPT because they wanted to save polar bears.
Yeah.
And I think it was just like, even, in 13, 14-year-old minds, like that sentiment is growing.
Yeah. And I think, like my daughter, she graduated, she's a writer. Like, to her, it's abhorrent that people are using AI to write anything. Like, and I get her point of view. That's her craft. That's what she's really good at, and she's really good at it. But Emily cannot. Like, she literally bristles when you bring up AI in that context. Now, she knows and accepts that it will do good and great, but she just does not understand why people use it to write. And she feels like that's what's going to lose the craft of writing if we allow AI to do all our writing for us. So I think it's there. I think there's a fear about job loss. Like, it's going to take my job. There's going to be no jobs for us, which, to be fair, we're seeing in some areas. I mean, I think it's like any other technology. There's a bedding in period. I think we have to be careful about, like, every single technology since the invention of the quill has caused some level of angst in society. So I always go back to this. When in Puritan England, when they brought in paper and the quill to let kids write down, so they had the Puritans felt like this was a disaster because they would lose their ability to remember anything because they wrote everything down. Of course, that didn't happen. But then you walk through it. When the trasher was invented, the corn trasher was invented, farm jobs are going to go away. That didn't happen. Now, it happens, but you just displace the workforce and they go somewhere else. And that's always happened. And we have higher employment in this country, or roughly higher employment in this country right now than we've ever had at any period in history. So the myth that we're displacing jobs or we're getting rid of jobs because of AI persists, but it's not actually true yet. Now, it might get true, but it hasn't so far. So I think we just have to be careful about how we talk about AI. And I also feel like we also have to be very cognizant of the fact that we are building massive data centers. We are taking a huge draw. We are taking a huge draw on the power grid, and we don't have a very robust power grid as it stands. So there is a lot of angst about the impact it's going to have in the environment and is having on the environment. So I think we have to be careful about how we speak about AI. Now, I also think AI will help us fix some of those problems, right? It'll help to rationalize how much compute power we need to run AI, and eventually we'll need less and less and less. But at the moment, we're building huge data centers, and we need them. I mean, the irony of it all is that some of the people who are complaining about it are the very people who are the highest users of it. So there's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot. Yeah. And it's definitely not a very clean situation.
And I find myself, I can argue both sides of it at any point in time. In fact, I can argue both sides of almost anything. But in this one, like I am in two minds. Like I love it because I'm a technician. Like this is what I do. I love technology. But then I say, oh man, there's so much that we haven't come to grips with yet.
Right. And it evolves so quickly, we don't really have the time to figure out what those guardrails are, or policies around that.
You know, the other disappointing thing about AI is I think it's created this environment where nobody is wowed by technology anymore. Like
I can see that.
If you said I could get AI to build a house across the street and it'll be done in 4 hours, we'd probably say, yeah, it probably could do that. Like nothing would surprise us anymore. Like I find myself, it doesn't matter what people tell me AI will do. I say, yeah, I can believe that because. So, like, you know, you remember when the iPod came out, we were all fascinated that you could put 1,000 songs. Like, I mean, fascinated that you could put 1,000 songs on a thing that fit in your hand like a cigarette package. That wouldn't happen today. If someone told you there was 1,000 songs sitting there in midair, you'd believe it. Like it's crazy how it's taken the wow factor out of tech.
Yeah, I could see that.
Which is a shame because that's part of what the appeal of tech is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So throughout the evolution of the technology at Werner, I'm sure cybersecurity was kind of always at the forefront of your mind. What did that evolution look like?
Yeah, I think I was, again, heartened when I got there that there was a cybersecurity team and a very well-skilled, well-educated cybersecurity team, which, again, it's not uncommon to walk into corporations, even 6 years ago, where cybersecurity took a back seat, and it did not at Werner, which was really encouraging to see. Now, again, my philosophy on cybersecurity versus the guy who was running it was slightly different, but not that terribly different. And then you know, as you leave, or as you're on largely on-prem solutions and you start to work towards the cloud, your cybersecurity strategy has to change. So you go from, especially with something like AS400, which really can only be largely perimeter secured. So very good perimeter security, you know, some zero trust going on in the environment. But that was it. And that's pretty much they'd done everything you could do in that environment to secure it as much as possible. So as we started to transition from largely on-prem to cloud, then you have to start looking at WAFs, and you have to start looking at different ways of logging and different ways of monitoring and alerting and different ways of securing. So again, very lucky that I inherited a really good team. You know, there's a couple of guys who are still there who just are fantastic and are some of the best cybersecurity professionals I've worked with. So we sat down a lot in the first 6 months. We came up with a strategy about the migration, about as the migration was happening, how would we secure and monitor both environments? And then as we got more and more towards the cloud, how would we allow newer technology secure it? And then we implemented, you know, they were doing penetration tests, but we started doing red team events. You know, we started looking at those results more in the sense of mind that we got to fix any problem they find immediately, depending on the criticality they gave it. So just a lot more probably energy into it. And then I think the other really important step was, I think of security, it should be the first thing you think of when you're deploying software, when you're developing it, when you're deploying it, when you're configuring it. Like if you're writing an application, the first thing you should be saying to yourself before you write the first line of code is, how am I going to secure this application? Like, how am I going to make it as secure as it can possibly be? So there was some of that, but like in most non-technical companies like if I'm designing software in 2000, I have to think of that first. But if I'm developing software internally for a corporation that's going to be used internally as an application, it's probably the last thing you think of, or towards the end of the cycle before you deploy it. Okay, how do I secure it? So the flip for us was think about securing it first, and then build the application on top of the security, not the security as an afterthought on top of the application. And so I put it to the team as security needs to just become a part of our DNA. It's the first thing we think of every single time. And again, the cybersecurity team I inherited did a fantastic job of getting that message out there. So, and we've done a really good job on that. So I think in general, got lucky with the team, came up with a good strategy around how we manage that transition from on-prem to cloud, and then spent a huge amount of time over the next, and to this day, just educating not just the development and the engineering and the service desk and all of the teams within IT, but the entire organization around phishing, around malicious attempts, around social engineering attacks, every vulnerability we could think of and every vector we could think of, we're doing our best to educate people. But it's a battle. You know what it's like better than I do, right? It's a non-stop battle.
It is. And so, it's no secret that Werner and Fleet Defender are working together. So what got you thinking along the lines of like expanding the cybersecurity to the vehicle layer?
Yeah, so it really was, I started to spend a lot of time with autonomous trucking companies. So, we look at autonomous trucking as an inevitability of the future. Like, I think that's the fairest way to speak it. It also will help us solve a problem, and the problem is driver shortage. And but to be clear, we don't see it as a driver replacement. We see it as augmenting the driver experience. So we have an awful lot of drivers. With the acquisition of First Fleet, we're somewhere in the 11 or 12,000 range of drivers, and those drivers over time, their expectations of the job have changed. So I think in the 80s and 90s, over the road was the expectation. They wanted to do that. They liked doing that. But over time, that's changed to they want to be home every night. Drivers want to get home every night, or they want to be out for 2 or 3 nights, not 2 or 3 weeks. And when you look at it, where autonomy can fit into our network, it's probably on some of those long haul routes. So, but again, not to replace drivers, just to sort of change, the demographic of the driver, and drivers will be, in big cities, and they will do local or short runs, or from from terminal to warehouse or DC to warehouse. So lots of driver jobs. Driving isn't going away anytime soon, but we think autonomy at some point becomes relevant in our network. Let's put it that way. Maybe not a huge relevance, but it gets more and more relevant. When I was looking at these companies, and Derek had asked me to just look at the tech, evaluate the tech, I always asked, how are you securing the truck? And the answer always came down to how they were securing the software on the truck and the data on the truck, and never how they were securing the truck itself. And my concern was, okay, what stops somebody from getting on through a bus of some sort and just deploying their own software on the truck and taking over the robotics that manage the autonomy? And not only did they not answer that question, they kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, that's probably not going to happen. And I'm like, well, it's probably the most likely in my mind. And I spent a lot of time thinking I'm the crazy one here, because if all of these guys aren't thinking about it, why am I thinking about it? But I really was going, why would it not concern you that would be if you're securing everything on the truck, except the ability to do a bare metal attack and install my own OS on it, why wouldn't that be the most likely attack vector? Why wouldn't that be the one I would concentrate on if I wanted to hijack your fleet and shut it down? Or hijack your fleet and make it do what I wanted to do? But nobody really answered that question. Now, I did get some interest from, no, I'm not trying to paint those guys as being dumb about it. They weren't. They were, we were getting some interest in some conversation, right, but it wasn't what they thought about. So then when I met you guys at Fleet Defender, and I think you remember that day I come over to see, you had an Audi A6, I think, on the floor, and you showed me what you're doing. I'm like, that's what I was talking about. Like, that was like, and it was the first time, like, I'm like, okay, somebody's on the same page. Somebody gets what I'm thinking about. Like, that was you and your team. So then when you guys developed that and you came up with the device and we piloted that, and then you migrated that device to being software, and then you deploy it on platform science, all of a sudden now in a situation where you're doing exactly what I need to do, which always meant to was monitor traffic on and off the truck, watch for what that traffic could and can do, and make sure that nobody beyond the software and the data on the truck, nobody is doing anything nefarious on the metal. Like they're just not installing somehow. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like the light bulb went on. Like it was a moment of revelation. I was like, crap, somebody gets what I'm thinking about.
Right.
Really gets it.
Yeah. And that's a lot of people weren't really aware of that. I mean, it wasn't until 2015, 2016 that there was a Jeep Cherokee that was hacked live on the news. And that's when people started really waking up that, vehicles could be hacked and really bad things could happen when they were hacked. And, I think it's just a matter of time, or, back then, we were thinking along the lines of it was just a matter of time before, foreign actors, organized crime, whoever, started to realize this and started targeting national security, which logistics is kind of at the core of our national security.
And you're right. If you think about, and I sort of implore the trucking companies to look at what you developed and what you bring to the cybersecurity table. Like if you think about it, if a foreign actor or a foreign cabal or some sort of mafia group in whatever bad state they happen to be in wants to attack the US or Europe or any other country, like one of the first things you're going to go after is transportation. Like it's the healthcare system, it's the financial systems, and it's the transportation system, probably in that order. But that's what they're going to go after, because that's the three things that feel like they could cripple you. If your healthcare goes down, if your financial systems go down, and if your transportation goes down and you can't move food or water from one place to another, or at least you limit the ability to do that, that's probably what they're going to go attack. So I say this to my counterparts in other companies, like there is a little bit of level of, well, that's never happened, so why do I need it? And my response to that is the one I've been telling you for years. Well, you don't need it till you need it, right? And the day it happens is the day you'll need it, and you don't have it. So I'm trying to encourage my counterparts to take a look at you guys.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And I mean, and that's a perfect segue into just Werner and just you guys just launched this new startup accelerator. Yep. And I feel like, I don't know if we're like the first startup you've ever worked with. I seriously doubt it. But, watching the evolution of how our partnership formed and how we worked with you as a partnership, and now seeing the accelerator gets me extremely excited, because I know for us, like our partnership was crucial, like in getting Fleet Defender, like to understand more about the industry, to understand how our solution fits into logistics, how the end user uses it, and what that looks like. And so what was the motivation that got Werner thinking, hey, we want to actually formalize this. Let's create an actual accelerator and formalize this process?
Motivate. I mean, first of all, you weren't the first, but I think you were the first in the building with us for sure. And obviously I'd worked with startups at Vonage and at Sage, but at Werner, you were one of the very first. John Grange had Ops Compass, like that was one of the first ones we worked with, and we're still working with. But yeah, you were probably in the top first five that we worked with. I think the motivation, it's complicated, but it's also simple. Like, first of all, I believe every corporation has just should pick something in their community where they can help. And if we want to be tech forward and we want to be tech thinking and tech leaning, one of the areas where we can help is in the community that has startups, like the startup community across the board. So wherever we can help that community, I believe we should. And the reason I believe we should do it is because I also believe that the only innovation happening in technology, the real innovation in technology, is happening at that level. It's at the startup level, it's at the founder level. Now, for every 20, there's only 2 or 3 that are really innovating. The other ones are probably trying to do something that's already been done before in a new or different way. But 2 or 3 of them are doing something really, really innovative. Something that's never been done before, something that's going to blow up and become something massive. Because all of the other software companies, all of the big software companies, yeah, you could argue they're innovating, but they're really not. They're fast following. So, they innovate, a software company innovates for the first couple of years, and then they get into, okay, we have a product, now we'll enhance the product we have, and now we have revenue, and now we're profitable, so we got to go into revenue protection mode. And that's kind of the way they go. So at some point it becomes too risky to be really innovative, and they stop being really innovative. So they become fast followers if they follow at all. And sometimes they just keep developing on top of the same product they had, and they go out of business. And most software companies go out of business. Let's be clear. They last for 15 or 20 years if they're successful, and then they either get acquired or their technology, disappears because it's obsolete. So I love working with the startup community because it helps the community as a whole. It keeps talent in the area, whether it's here in Omaha or in Atlanta or wherever you happen to be. But I do believe there's a lot of really good talent in Omaha, and we should be doing everything we can to keep that tech talent within our state. And then finally, it's where innovation is happening. So we look at it and we go, that's something we need to be involved in. But more than anything, it's just like, for me, it's really about the community. It's about keeping people who are really smart here in Omaha so they don't leave. There's not a brain drain. And even if the first startup they have fails and the second startup they have failed, if they're serial entrepreneurs, one of them's going to hit. And one of them's going to get, like, it doesn't have to become $1 billion company, but if it becomes 50 million, they're employing people. They're also educating people. They're mentoring people. They're creating the next generation of entrepreneurs. And I just think it matters that you don't let that talent leave the state you're in or the community you're in.
Right. So what do you want to get out of this accelerator? Are you specifically looking for companies that have a solution that something Werner can adopt and use?
Like right now, what we try to do is pick three companies that we could look at what their idea was and what they had developed, and say, if that gets to a certain point, we can use it. We could integrate that into our tech stack. So that's absolutely the first thing. The second thing is exactly what I said. I think it's a community service. It's not a huge drain on us. We have the space. We have the expertise. We have the time. I mean, we probably don't have the time, but we'll make the time to talk to people and just help. Like, whether it's a technical problem, a networking problem, an engineering problem, a legal problem. We're not going to give legal advice, but you know what I mean. We can give the benefit of something we know. It's a HR, a human resources, whatever it happens to be. Like, we can just help those founders and their teams for a couple of months. As well as do what you would tend to do in Accelerator, which is give the technical help. And we got a lot of good technical people in Werner. And also, I want to be a bit of an example to other corporations in the area. So look at what we're doing. It's not a massive drain on resources. It's not a massive drain on finances. It's not a massive drain on anything. So do the same thing. So I'm going to go beat, I know CIOs at other corporations, and I am beating them up a little bit to try and get them to do the same thing. And they will. They're good people.
I love it. I mean, just being in the Omaha, Nebraska area and in the startup ecosystem since 2018, what it looked like then is nothing like what it looks like today.
Yeah. I mean, it's
exploding.
I mean, even the 6 years since I've been here, it's gone great, and that's because of there's so many initiatives going on. Tech Nebraska. I'm on. Again, I'm giving a shameless plug here. I'm on the executive committee, but in just a couple of years, we've gone from startup as a nonprofit to having a lot of influence on not just the startup community, but the tech community at large. And we're also getting involved in legislation and how can we help, push legislation which will make Nebraska more tech friendly. So that's another area where people can get involved. But then you look at Invest Nebraska, Open Range. I just had coffee before I came here with Laurel. Like, great ideas, and they're all focused on how do we make this a better place, a better environment for startups and for entrepreneurs and founders. And it's working. Like, it's all over the place and it's working. I'm glad to be a small part of that, but I do think just like that whole, before I ever got here, that whole movement was gaining traction, and now it's just exploded. And I hope we can turn into the next Austin, Texas, or Charlotte, or San Francisco, oh, well, not San Francisco in some ways, but San Francisco from a tech perspective. Like, it would be great to be the Silicon Prairie is a real thing.
Yep.
Let's make the Silicon Prairie be centered in Omaha, on Lincoln and Nebraska.
No, I love that. And I mean, do you see this as round one? And it's like the first round is 3, and then you have plans to expand it, or are you just going to see how this goes?
We're going to see how this goes. I mean, so far so good. So yes, I definitely see it as round 1. I think we do this again and again and again. Again, we have to make sure that we can get the right companies in. But yeah, I don't see us stopping.
What would your advice be? So you've got 3 companies in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did you tell them? Like, say there's an accelerator in another city, or, Kiewit or First National or someone here opens up an accelerator and a company gets accepted. Like, what would be your advice to those founders? Like, hey, you're in, this is what you got to do.
I'm not sure I have advice from, like, I mean, I think what the expectation is that you just use the environment we've created for you to the best of your ability, like, get the most out of it. So, I mean, the message to them is, we're here to help in any way that we can. The idea is like, we have a list of things that we can provide for them, but just come to us, come ask questions, come get involved, get engaged with us. We have expertise in all of the areas that you're working in, and we're willing to share that with you. So, like, for me, it's be proactive about this. Go after it. Don't sit and wait for us to come to you. Come grab us and ask questions, and then tell us where we can help.
That was actually my advice to one of the founders that's in your accelerator now. We were talking about it, and he asked, what did we get out of, working with Werner? I said, where we were sitting, the cybersecurity team was one row that way.
Yeah.
The tech deployment team, one row that way, the driver team, everybody was within 1 or 2 rows of us. And so, get out there and talk to everybody, ask questions, like you said, be proactive.
Yeah. And if you look at I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, that's one of the things, one of the things we did when I got to Werner's, we redesigned the IT floor, the whole space we're in, to be a wide open, very collaborative space. And you saw the advantage of that, right? Yeah. Because you could just put your head up, and whoever you need is probably within yelling distance, or certainly within walking distance. And we have no offices, no walls. So I think that helps too, in this environment where people walk in and they just go find who they need and have that conversation. So yeah, I'm proud of the space we built, and I'm proud of the way we use the space.
Well, it's a beautiful space, and we absolutely appreciated you inviting us in house, and the benefit that us got there, that we got from being there. And thank you also for coming on the podcast. This has been really fantastic. And just kind of in closing, I think, I've always seen you as just, thinking well ahead in the future. You saw things happening with cybersecurity, with vehicles, long before many of your counterparts did. What do you see happening in the next 10 years, like through this digital transformation and trucking and everything else? What does 10 years from now look like?
I have no idea. I think, so I can speculate, and I do think that AI is going to play a massive part in what happens over the next 10 years. I do think we have to be careful about the backlash, because I think it's coming, or maybe already starting. I sit around and I try to come up with where we would be. I used to feel like I was pretty good at predicting where a certain technology would end up. I have no idea. Like 6 months ago, I made predictions and none of them came true. In fact, they were completely wrong. I do think that there's a point in the future where the idea of application platforms, and the idea of an application layer and a transportation layer and a database layer and a communications layer go away. I just don't know how they make it long term. Now, and by that, I don't know that it's the next year or 2 or 3. It might be 5+ years, because I do think you got to have somewhere to persist data. You got to have we have all kinds of regulations in this country. If you're a publicly traded company or even privately held, you have to be accountable for your data. So I think data has to persist. The SEC are still going to insist on regulations being met. SOX is still a thing. So all of those things, I don't think you can get rid of platforms quickly for that reason. But I do think there's a point in the future where digital agents are talking to digital agents, and some of the need for platforms or user interfaces go away. I think the database will always be there. So I think that's why you're seeing Salesforce, for example, kind of reinvent itself as a digital or an agentic AI platform versus a CRM platform. So I think that's probably as much as I'm willing to predict, because I think anything else, if you played it back to me in 5 years, I'd look like an idiot, because I don't think anyone has a clue. And it's interesting, you know, I listen to tech podcasts all the time, and an awful lot of people are just trying to predict stuff, and I'm like, I don't know why you're doing that, because it's fun, I suppose. Maybe I'll do it off mic, but I just feel like we don't know what's going to happen, but I do know it's exciting. Like, this is. Like, if you think about tech, I think the internet was probably the closest thing to what's going on right now. And we left that in the dust a year ago. Like, I think it's so much more. This is the singular moment in tech so far. This is the one, you know, this is what's changing everything. Even how we write software, how we like, and I mean, we, you know, even at Werner now, we have agentic AI writing software for us. So it's all changing.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I'd been like, writing code, I don't know. I mean, I could see it aiding, but like, now that you got agents out there building entire platforms like overnight, I couldn't have predicted that.
Like what Anthropic deployed gave us 2 months ago, fantastic. Like, it's amazing how good it is at what it does. So I have no idea, but I am really, really excited.
Yeah, me too.